So, what I was just telling them, Tim, was basically about how you were mentoring me, through several parts of this, as well as with End of the Universe, and that we were staying sort of, that I was all over the place with certain aspects of the story, and you kept me kind of focused on making sure does it advance the story. And at the end of the day, it's all about the story and getting the message across. But, Tim and I had talked everything about which actors might be available, and Tim helped me put us in touch with Chris Showerman, who plays the Angel character, the fellow there at the end in Death Valley. But he was always, he's one of our friends in terms of this community and this movement. Like Tim's done a lot of stuff. You see him everywhere these days. And I was just very fortunate to be able to have him, sort of like keep me sort of in the middle of the road, because there were times that I was, calling him, asking a zillion questions, and, he just kind of kept me focused on, keep it to 90 minutes, kind of tell your story, stick to the story, does it advance the story? And, the technology and the sort of, the post-production aspects kind of work themselves out, because you just want it to keep looking better, and to that extent, like I took care of that, but when it comes to the story, what's ultimately going to help you get your story across and or possibly distributed. And, Tim, you maybe want to say a couple of words about how I used to bug you all the time.
So, ultimately, think of your story as, in a structural sense, is that what you actually need and what you don't need to progress the story. And again, like you're saying, you want to keep it as short as you can. I mean, legally, I think, basically the 84 minutes is the shortest. I mean, that's as far as feature length. Distributors prefer 88. So you shoot for 88 to 90. I'm somewhere in that range. So that, you need that long to tell the story. But as they say, what is it? Story doesn't have to be any longer than the next pee break. Just say, if you're sitting in a theater, you don't want to be there too long. I mean, it's not, Avengers. It's just a story that you're telling, and you want to get that story done in a certain amount of time. It's not take too long. It also helps you because your pace of the film is going to be, you can pace it a lot easier, a lot better, so it doesn't drag. So it's a very, very complex, and as he was describing, complicated. It can be expensive process in shooting it. There's a lot of things that will come up, and he was talking, I love the phrase landmines. There's a lot of those. So you have to be very, very careful if you're stepping off into that realm to do it. There's a lot of do's and don'ts, very simple, basic do's and don'ts. Some of this information is available on Google. You can just look at it and talk to, get information from filmmakers, get all the tips, all the things, all the do's and don'ts. And then from there, you can come out and try to make something happen. So, and as he said as well, that you have to have good talent, and then you've got to have a strong post-production in terms of editing in particular, because what you have is a whole pile of footage with no story until it's cut together. And editing is absolutely critical. Apart from having the foundational story to begin with, editing is very, very critical, because all that footage has to be assembled. And it can be assembled in a dozen different ways in order to tell your story. So it's very, very important as well in post to take the time. You're going to take the time to make this thing cohesive and make sense out of it, and even make it. You can improve the story by 25-30% just in the way it's cut. Just in the editing. And my note to him at the beginning was, Sonny is the character. You need to follow Sonny all the way through this. And if we're going to establish him as the serial killer character, what is it about him that is driving him to do these things? What is it about him that's tormenting him? And so I said, so he decided to personify that torment by having these demon and angel characters that are in his head, essentially, and to see them on the screen. So to manifest themselves as characters and actors and things like that. That's, that'll give that rounds out the character a lot more. So it's not just somebody killing people. We see all this, we see him, both sides of his life with his daughter, with his mother, with his friends, all of us, and then the other side, the dark side, and that back and forth is the place throughout the whole movie.
So we stayed with the iPhone and RAW, and then we compensated in post, and you know, we got real lucky, but you guys will get lucky too. You know, I mean, you'll find your own things and you'll tell me. You know, but certainly in the next time around, what I would definitely do is, get like a small light kit. And, you know, a lot of the times I was like setting up the phone and then running into the shot. You know, how about a director?
Because, you know, to me, if I'm directing a project, I don't want really much to do with anything being in front of the camera. It's just, to me, it's extraordinarily distracting. Some directors do that and work it out very well. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. Ben Stiller, a few others, direct their own films, and they're in them. And I'm like, man, that is just the most crazy thing for me. It's distracting to have to jump back and forth between the front of the camera and the behind. So I usually avoid it. Just stay on one side or the other, and that's just personally.
And by the way, I have an ebook that if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you know, I lay out a lot of things, you know, with respect to color correction. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you can't shoot on an iPhone because there's no depth of field, you know, and you won't be able to color grade it. Well, I was able to do the color for this all in Final Cut. So you can get around that. No one says you have to color grade a film. It's great if you can, and you can get special lenses now for the iPhone, and you can, you know, increase the depth. We had one review that was very positive that said the same thing. You know, he would have benefited greatly from. But I didn't know that then, and I know it now. But at the end of the day, he's right. Like you have to, like, we didn't have a film production designer. No one sat there and said, well, you know, we're shooting over here at this location, and it's all sort of like lots of blues and browns and stuff, and so we need the people to show up on set, and they can't wear stripes. No, with mobile film, you don't have that. You know, like you're going out and all of a sudden, you know, let's do a scene. And, you know, let's get lucky. We have everybody here. This is what we need. You know, this is sort of the part of the story we need to get. The sun's going down. The mountains are there. Let's go for it. You know, no one's setting. Ideally, if you can organize everything, so much the better. You know, but that doesn't work in terms of SAG, number one. And number two, it may not work in terms of color because you may have to really, you know, deal with that on the other end. But there's a certain element of providence that go and do it and it's going to somehow work out. I know that doesn't sound like the greatest, hook to hang your hat on, so to speak, but if you just do it and you do it enough, somehow you wind up getting lucky like we did. And you know, again, like I can't thank Tim enough for all of his input. You know, people are out there, by the way, you know, people have this thing in Hollywood, actors and stuff like that. They're people too. You know, he has an interest in this, and he's been incredibly giving and gracious to me, and, you know, benefited a lot from the things that he's had to say. And, you know, I'd like to throw it open, you know, to any questions that anybody has. We have somebody in the back there.
Yeah, from one New Yorker to another. How did you manage to get Tim Russ to mentor you?
Incredibly lucky. I believe it or not, I went on some fan site and there was either some thread or a link back to an email that I found for him, which he no longer uses, by the way. So you can't do the same thing that I did. But and I emailed him and I told him about this other project, and we got a conversation going. And I went out to Los Angeles to shoot some green screen with him. I mean, Tim's a businessman too. He needs to be paid. And we worked everything out so that I went out there one weekend a couple of years back, and then we've remained friends. And you know, I think that Tim probably, and I'm speaking for him, he gets pitched probably hundreds of things every year.
Yeah, there's people that come to me for different projects. As a matter of fact, Brian and I first met because he was working on a much bigger, full-scale project. It was sort of a sci-fi action-adventure sort of thing. And that's what he contacted me about, because I had already shot, you know, some of this stuff already. And we were just talking to me about directing it. And then subsequently, while he was putting that together, he just, he wanted to shoot this mobile piece, on the cell phone. And I said, well, in mostly in New York, put it together, see what you can do on it, and so he just kind of ran off and did it. And I didn't even know he had gone and done that until after we started shooting, and then he started sending me the cuts and things like that. I had no idea he had done it. Well, I was talking to him about something entirely different.
Because I got tired of, they were dragging it all over the place,
Yeah.
and, lawyers and this and that, and it's still going on, and it's morphed into something else now. Fortunately, we got rid of the dead weight,
Yeah.
but I was just like, I could shoot a movie on my phone before we ever shoot a frame of that. And so now, this is my calling card to show,
Yeah.
that I can do it, I can be trusted with the budget, etc.